to another episode of Sporting Max. Today we are joined by Octagon Basketball Vice President and NBL and NBA agent Daniel Moldovan. Welcome to the podcast, Daniel. It's a great pleasure to have you on. How are you going at the moment?
Thank you. I'm going very well. This is the highlight of my week, so I'm excited to be on. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Daniel. Now, I'd like to start off with what was growing up like for you?
Well, believe it or not, I was not a basketball player. How I ended up in the basketball industry is kind of odd, and it was unexpected. Definitely not planned. I was a swimmer, and I was lucky enough to have untethered access to the Sydney Kings growing up through Mike Rudlewski, the original owner. And I was very, very lucky that both Brian Goorjian and Brett Brown had me basically attached to their hip, which gave me a good insight into the basketball world. And it was the way that I started building my first kind of like friendships and relationships with players to kind of be able to, work on having that rapport that every agent needs to have. And I got a phone call, I got an email one day from the then commissioner of the NBA, David Stern, inviting me to New York to work in the NBA head office, which I immediately grabbed with both hands. And fast forward a year and a half, I got basically headhunted out of the NBA head office by the oldest sports agency in basketball history. So I was very lucky, Max, and it all kind of fell into place organically. And I ended up a sports agent, unbeknownst to me how. So that's the story.
So what was that like to receive an email from the great late David Stern?
I thought I was getting pranked. I had to look 3 or 4 times. The email was signed "Kind regards, DJS," and I thought to myself that somebody's messing with me. One of my friends is playing a prank, but it was legit, and it was very, very exciting. The day that I got it, I was 19 years old, and my hands were shaking. And I quickly called my dad and I said, "Dad, I need you to buy me a flight to New York immediately." And the rest is history.
So when did you realize that you wanted to be a player agent?
Well, when I got called to a meeting with the president of Intersport, his name is Mark Fleischer. He's the most experienced agent in the history of this industry. I didn't even know fully the details of what being an agent meant and what was required. And Mark really ran me through all of the ups, the downs, the good parts, the bad parts of being an agent. And I thought about it for about a week. I went home and I digested everything that he said. And it wasn't until that dinner that being an agent was even in my mind at all. But it did feel right because I had great relationships with players, Australian players at the time, and great relationships with coaches. If it wasn't for Brian Goorjian helping me sign my first 3 players, Mark Worthington, David Barlow, and CJ Bruton, I don't know if I would have had any success at all. So I have a lot to owe to a lot of people, and I take no credit whatsoever. I was just very lucky that people looked out for me and opened up doors for me.
You mentioned your sort of first 3 players, CJ Bruton, Dave Barlow, and Wertho. What was that like to have sort of like 3 superstars and legends of Australian basketball, being your first 3 players that you signed? Yeah,
really amazing. Wertho and Barlow were the first 2. CJ was the close behind 3rd. And I remember Gorge called me to a lunch and he said, "Look, I've got these 2 young stars, or I think they're going to be stars." At the time, they weren't stars. Wertho was, 2 weeks into his rookie season coming out of Division 2 school. And David Barlow was only a development player making $10,000 at the time.
Wow.
And Gorge said to me, "Trust me, Daniel, these 2 are going to be special." And, I had nobody on my books, and I was an agent for 4 weeks before that, not knowing what I was doing. So I was lucky enough that the first 2 players that I signed, I didn't have to do a recruiting pitch. I didn't have to convince them. They trusted Gorge, and Gorge trusted me. And that started me on the right track. So I got very lucky.
You mentioned before sort of becoming a player agent at Intersport Management. How did that role come about?
So when I was in the NBA head office, I was working in the team marketing and business operations division with a guy named Ty Sullivan. We were there in the NBA head office working on the building of the G League at the time. And Ty left the NBA head office to work for Entersport. And Ty called me and he said, hey, we've got offices all over the world, but we have no office in Australia. We really want to expand. And I've convinced Mark that you're the guy. Come to New York. At the time I was in Hong Kong when I got the phone call. Come to New York and meet with Mark and another gentleman named Stephen Human, who's now the president of CAA. And the two of them sat there at the dinner, grilled me, and asked me every question under the sun, most of which I had no answer for. And that's how it happened. It was just basically a matter of who you know rather than what you know.
12 years at Entersport, I mean, that's a long period of time. What are your biggest highlights there?
I was really lucky. Look, I can say that, you know, starting off as an agent, working with Mark and representing guys like Tony Parker and Andre Kirilenko and Mehmet Okur, huge European names, that was great. But honestly, for me, the highlight was I learned from the best. You know, Mark, who is in the twilight years now of his career, is the GOAT of the agent world. In my first ever NBA Summer League, Donnie Nelson, the president of Dallas Mavericks, tapped me on the shoulder and he said to me, Daniel, I hope you realize how lucky you are to learn this industry from Mark. So for me, honestly, the highlight is just watching Mark do what he did, watching him negotiate. He was just unbelievable. I got really lucky.
Now in 2017, I believe you started up your own basketball agency and Lighthouse Sports Management. Yep. When did you decide that you wanted to actually have your own agency, and where did that idea sort of sprout from?
I think it's something that every agent goes through. You know, you reach a point in your career and you're kind of like, wow, I wonder what it would like to have my own shop and put my fingerprints and my style onto my own agency. And it's very much a sink or swim situation. You know, everyone always says that you don't ever reach real success unless you take a risk. And I wanted to take that risk, and it paid off because over the last 2 years, I've been essentially headhunted by most of the top agencies in the game. And as you know, I've recently joined Octagon. It was something that I'm really, really happy I did, because the notion of sink or swim and the notion of you must achieve now, there's no salary coming in, you eat what you kill, was a really good motivating environment for me to be in, and I loved it, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
So what challenges did you face owning your own agency?
It's very expensive. I can tell you that going from a big agency essentially to leaving and going on your own, every dollar counts. So financially, it's a burden. You've really got to invest everything back into the business. Yep. Then you've got to convince players to sign with an agency that has no history. I had history as an agent, but to have a brand new agency that when you go into a meeting with a family to explain to them why they should go with you, that's a challenge. It was one that I enjoyed, and I don't shy away from challenges, but it's never easy to walk in and convince a family and an athlete to sign with you over some of these monster agencies with very sexy client lists when you're coming in as a solo individual, guy with a small agency.
So how do you get players to, I guess, sign with your agency over like the other monster agencies?
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, being an agent, Max, it's all about relationships. This is a relationship-based business, right? And as long as you can build a rapport with family and the player, and they see how genuine you are and see how much you truly care for them and how much you want to fight for them, I think that's the most important thing. At the end of the day, all the top agencies pretty much do the same thing in terms of services. But what this comes down to at the end of the day is how much are you going to fight for that client? You know, are you going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning when they call and something's wrong and needs to be fixed? And if you can convey that and show that it's genuine, that's really all that matters at the end of the day.
In March this year, you joined forces with Octagon Basketball, who have NBA superstar talent like Giannis Antetokounmpo and Steph Curry. How did that move come about?
Yeah, I was, look, I know a lot of people in the industry, as you can imagine, being in it for as long as I have.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the agents in Octagon are agents that I've known and dealt with and communicated with over the years. And it was actually something that kind of felt really seamless. They recently had some, you know, movement within the agency. One agent left to go join another agency, and there was room to bring in somebody, the right person, to a relatively, you know, large role. And I didn't want to leave this agency that I created to just be one of a million agents under a big banner. But this was the right role for me. And to be honest, the biggest thing for me was how I felt about the other agents in the agency. And the guys at Octagon, guys and the girls at Octagon, are unbelievable people. They're very talented, and instantly I struck up a great relationship, and we talked for a few months. This wasn't an overnight thing, but everything just really fit, and we really see the industry the same way. And so that was really important for me.
So who are some of the players who you actually manage?
Well, Max, I've got 47 players on my list.
Wow.
So I've got a lot of guys. To rattle off names to you, we could be here all day. Aside from the Australian players that I'm sure you're familiar with, as the vice president of Octagon, I'm going to be assisting with everybody. The pre-existing guys that were with Octagon before I joined, I'm here to help Alex Saratzis and Jeff Austin with those guys. Whether it's the Antetokounmpo brothers, or whether it's Campazzo or Matt Thomas or whoever it is, I'm here to assist with everything while continuing to service my own clients like the Josh Giddeys and the Isaac Humphreys of the world. And that's how we're going to work. We do everything as a team, essentially. It's not really, you know, individual based. Everybody contributes.
Now Josh Giddey, what a star. He's been in the NBL this year. Now, obviously not playing out the rest of the season in preparation for the draft. How have you viewed him throughout this season, and what's he been like to work with?
It's funny, Max, Josh says to me all the time, he says, be honest, you didn't think that I'd be this successful this year, did you?
Yeah.
And I said to him, and it's a fair question, because, you know, a year ago, Josh wasn't on NBA radars like he is today. So it's fair for Josh to ask me that. But the truth is, I really did expect this of him. I knew that he was a really rare talent. He has a very rare basketball brain, as I've mentioned multiple times. And I did expect him to make a big jump up the rankings. You cannot hide a 6'9" point guard, right? They don't grow on trees. And couple that with the work ethic. You know, Josh has made the climb that I expected, and we're still just scratching the surface. You know, in basketball terms, Josh is still a baby. You know, Josh still doesn't have any idea how good he can be. So we're just scratching the surface right now. So I'm excited for him. Australia should be excited for him. It's going to be a fun ride for the whole country to kind of get behind.
Now Josh has also been compared to LaMelo Ball. Put in the right program, do you see him having a similar influence in his rookie season in the NBA? Yeah,
for sure. Look, LaMelo is lucky to be in a situation where they really needed his skill set. And a lot of times that is the number one key to a player having success early on. Not so much are they talented enough. Look at RJ Hampton. His first stop wasn't necessarily the right fit. There wasn't really a role there, but as soon as he made a move, he's exploded. So landing in the right place is also a really underrated aspect of this whole process. Josh is good enough. You know, hoping that he gets to the right team is the next step in the process. But sure, look, I don't think that there's anything that Josh can't do. There's a lot of similarities between him and LaMelo. There are some things that Josh does better. There are some things that LaMelo does better. But by all means, we can, you know, confidently say that Josh can have the same impact. Sure.
So you mentioned before, managing Isaac Humphries of the Adelaide 36ers. What's he also like to work with? But then having that injury earlier this season, sort of coming back in towards the later end of the back end of the season.
Yeah, look, I love Isaac to death. He is, he and I have a really special relationship where no matter what I tell him, whether good or bad, he retains it, he absorbs it, and he puts it into action. Those are the best kind of relationships as an agent, because you can actually leave your fingerprints and mold the player in the right direction, right? Isaac was off to an MVP caliber season. You know, we were all really, really excited to see if this would result in an MVP award or a Defensive Player of the Year award or both. And then the old injury bug struck at the worst possible time. So he's young. He's got many, many years ahead of him. Right now, it's just a matter of getting healthy. And if we can have a full season with no injuries, sky's the limit for Isaac. I mean, that's an NBA talent, as we all know, one of the best centers in the nation, went to Kentucky, Rookie of the Year in the NBL, and a year later, he's wearing an NBA uniform. So to get Isaac back there is the goal, is the number one goal. And he's in a great situation in Adelaide with a coach that believes in him and a system that fits him. So yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do with a full season.
Now I believe you also manage young Cairns Taipans next, Mojave King. Can you elaborate on Mojave and how great of a player he's going to be, as we've already seen some great signs from this NBL 21 season?
Sure. Look, Mojave is really, really, and I don't say this lightly at all, Mojave is a really, really special talent. You go back a year and Mojave was the biggest name coming out of the NBA Global Academy, bigger than Josh. And Josh will admit that, you know, Mojave was the star of that group. Now, Josh got lucky that he landed in a perfect scenario. And really, you know, he had a coach that handed him the keys and believed in him and didn't look at his age as a hindrance. Mojave hasn't landed in as good of a situation. And it's a process. The good thing is Mojave is 18 years of age. So he is not only going to make the NBA, he's going to be a special player in the NBA. And if it requires another year of overseas basketball before he makes the jump to the NBA, so be it. We don't shy away from that at all. The talent is what it is, and every NBA team knows how talented he is. And there are plenty of NBA teams that are waiting excitedly for Mojave to enter the NBA draft.
Now, Cam Oliver got a 10-day call-up for the Houston Rockets late in this season and performed incredibly well at a high standard of play. Does he get an NBA contract next season?
Yeah, I can't see any way that Cam is not in the NBA next year. What he did in that short 4-game stint, albeit on a team that was, you know, not in the playoff hunt and giving young guys an opportunity, which was great for him. What he did proves unequivocally he's an NBA player. So, you know, we're all on board the NBA train right now. And Cam also is, you know, Cam's 24 years of age. So he's also got many, many good years ahead of him and entering the NBA at the perfect time. So yes, I absolutely think that we've probably seen the last of Cam in the NBL.
Yep. Now with the likes of guys like who we just mentioned, Cam Oliver, Jay Sean Tatum, Didi Lazada, going to the NBA, what does that do for the NBL? And will we see an influx of scouts coming down under to scout our players?
Great question. I can tell you that I probably could name 15 plus NBA teams that are chomping at the bit to get out to Australia. The quarantine thing is a huge commitment because it basically means giving up a month of your life 2 weeks in a hotel, and then you've got to have at least 2 weeks on the ground. So yes, as we continue to funnel players to the NBA, we are really, really cementing ourselves as the number one hotbed or springboard to the NBA. And this is what all the scouts and all of the executives and the decision makers are now starting to realize, that this wasn't a couple of guys. There are another 10 guys in the NBL that could be on an NBA roster tomorrow and completely fit in and not look out of place. So yes, hopefully the Australian government eases these restrictions, because the second they do, there will be 30 NBA scouts on the ground immediately. So fingers crossed.
How do you go about things when one of your players might want to get a trade, or they might be out of contract? Where do you in this situation come into play?
Yeah, good question. Look, every situation's different. And this is where the relationships come in with the general managers of each NBA team. When a move or a change is needed, you've got to be open and honest and have a really, calm, collected conversation to see what can be worked out that works out best for both sides, right? The team is trying to do what's best for them. And as the agent, it's my job to do what's best for my client. So trying to find a situation that works for both sides and reach a happy medium, that's the trick of the trade. And that's where the skill of an agent is needed. So not always works out perfectly, but that's a big part of our job.
How do you find the experience of managing different sports people?
Tricky. I can say that being an agent and representing athletes means that you sleep when you can. You have to keep up with multiple time zones, multiple schedules. I can tell you, Max, I know what my player in Turkey has on his schedule tomorrow and what my player in Japan, when he needs to be at a photo shoot. And sometimes I forget when I need to take my dog to the groomer down the road. I'm managing 50 schedules and struggle to manage my own. That's life as an agent.
So what does your weekly schedule currently look like?
Well, I just got back to America after 6 months in Australia. So I am very much playing catch up now and trying to, visit with clients and meet, obviously COVID protocols make things tricky, but meet up with as many people as I can that I haven't been able to see for a while. But the travel schedule is about to kick up again, as we go into this pre-draft mode with the combine, then the draft. In addition, we've got the Boomers coming out here soon. And then there's NBA Summer League. And then when Josh gets back from Japan, we'll have to settle Josh into a new city. If Aaron Baines is going to be making a new move, we're going to have to look at settling him into a new city. So lots and lots of travel is in my very near future.
What would be your best advice to anyone trying to become a successful player agent when they're older like yourself? 2
things. Number one, relationships are everything, right? If you want a big agency to look at potentially bringing you on board, you need to bring 2 things to the table. Number one, you need to have a pre-established network of people in the basketball industry, whether it's players that you know, or whether it's coaches and trainers that you know, but the ability to bring pre-existing relationships is extremely important. The second is you've got to work for free for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It's unfortunately the way that this industry is. Nobody gets handed a check to start as an agent on day one. And so the ability to, essentially work for free, like I said, it's an eat what you kill industry, is very, very important to cementing yourself as an agent.
Thanks, Daniel, for coming on the podcast today and putting aside half an hour or so of your time to come and have a chat. It's been awesome.
My absolute pleasure, Max. This was, like I said, the highlight of my week. And don't forget me when you're famous, all right?
Yep. Thanks,
All right.
Daniel.
Thanks,
Stay
Max.
tuned, everyone, for Sporting Max.